On this week's 51%, we're talking MLMs. We speak with Hey Hun author and former boss babe Emily Lynn Paulson about her experience working in a multi-level marketing company and why she left.
I noticed over time, people unfollowing me or ignoring my messages, and it just makes relationships uncomfortable when you're really trying to monetize them.
I'm Jesse King. It's all up next on 51%.
I was standing around like one of those girls I had seen in a movie. The whole world was a movie back then. I had my sunglasses on, I wanted to be seen without seeing shy Lolita. I wasn't really in it, I didn't really get it.
You're listening to 51%, a WAMC production dedicated to women's issues and experiences. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jesse King. I thought I'd start today with a scenario, and you can think about whether or not this has ever happened to you. You suddenly receive a blast from the past message online from someone you went to school with. Maybe they DM you or comment on a social media post saying something like, "Hey, hun," but shortly into the conversation, they start discussing products, or ask if you're interested in learning more about a great opportunity. Even if you were initially happy to hear from this person, suddenly you're feeling pressured to spend money. This is a common tactic of multi-level marketing companies, businesses that rely on selling to friends and family and recruit others to do the same. MLMs have been around for a long time. I remember as a kid going to Tupperware parties with my mom and playing games while all the other moms looked at products and drank wine. I should note that not all MLMs are pyramid schemes, despite how people commonly talk about them. According to the Federal Trade Commission, pyramid schemes revolve around recruitment. That's the main way people make money, by pulling other people in. While a good MLM should pay you based on your sales to retail customers. But the FTC still says pyramid schemes often disguise themselves as MLMs, and most people who join an MLM make little to no money, even if it's legitimate. Our guest today is Emily Lynn Paulson, an author, public speaker, sobriety coach, and former MLM girl boss herself. In her book, Hey Hun, Sales, Sisterhood, Supremacy, and the Other Lies Behind Multi-Level Marketing, Paulson reflects on her own experience selling skincare for an MLM. For the purposes of Hey Hun and our conversation, that company is called Rejuvenat. Paulson does not use the real name of the company she worked for legal reasons, but she also says she personally feels that a lot of MLM companies are the same. And to be clear, Paulson says her goal isn't to shame anyone who has been or is in an MLM. She mainly wants people to know what they're getting into and the potential risks of the work, even if you find success.
At the heart of it, it really comes down to the people who join MLMs. They're trying to combat loneliness. They're trying to combat, maybe the finances in the house. They're trying to maybe find something within themselves or discover themselves again. Like the intentions behind joining these are usually very good. And if you do find yourself in an MLM and you're feeling not so good about it, like, not to blame yourself, because there's a reason that they're very enticing. I actually was approached by a friend, which is how a lot of people get introduced to it. And I was really at a time in my life where I was kind of looking for something and I didn't really know what. I was done having kids and I was in this weird place where I kind of wanted to go back into the workforce, but it would have been really difficult to go back and get recertified and, spruce up my resume. And then the whole issue of childcare, it just really seemed impossible. So this opportunity came into my life and I really looked at it with rose-colored glasses. Like, wow, my friend, I trust her. She wouldn't lead me astray. So I joined really with a lot of ignorance, honestly, thinking, hey, here's some fun friends. It may go somewhere, it may not, but who cares? I didn't have a whole lot tied up into it, but I did have a little bit hope that it could be the next thing that I was looking for.
So I'm assuming when you joined, you had to buy your way in, or, at least you had to pay for some things up front.
Yes. So that's a big part of it. There are definitely a lot of requirements as far as the financial buy-in, and the way that this is talked around is oh, if you start your own business, you have rent on your building, or you have supplies you need for your startup. And it's kind of danced around like these are just startup costs for your business. But truly, you're just buying your own products. So you're essentially the customer. You're joining and you're being a customer. And there's nothing wrong with joining something and wanting a discount on products or whatever. But the problem with that is then everybody who joins also has a buy-in. And so the revenue, while it really looks good, is coming from the people who are buying in to the system.
In your book, you use a fake name for the company and fake products. I mean, in real life, did you like and believe in the products that you were selling?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of like many of the companies, it was a varied variety of products, skincare and supplements and whatnot. And the one thing about a lot of these multi-level marketing companies is the products are great. The products are good. There's nothing wrong with the products. So if you're a person who maybe isn't being really dedicated with your skincare, and then you start using this MLM skincare product, I mean, chances are your skin's going to look pretty good or get better, or, you're going to have that buy-in of, wow, I really like this stuff. So I genuinely liked the products. I told my friends about them. I talked about them, but there was a really strong emphasis on talking about the business and that, you joined the business. And so you want other people to join the business. And again, I kind of ran with ignorance in the sense that, well, I bought the business kit. Why wouldn't other people? And so that's really what I talked about with other people.
I know that sales parties can be a thing, but it feels like a lot of MLM work now happens online. What were some of the ways that you made sales?
Yeah, yeah. And, this was back around 2014 when Facebook was really, I mean, it wasn't super new, but there wasn't all the algorithms and everything that's involved now. And you really could just post something, share it, and people would be interested in it and ask you about it. So a lot of it was social media. And, we were given a lot of scripts to cold message people and memory joggers to reach out to friends from high school or old coworkers. So yeah, you really were taught to market very heavily on social media.
How did your friends and family feel? Especially as you're messaging them or trying to sell things to them.
This is really where kind of when I really started to come around to how problematic this was. From the get-go, you're really taught to diminish your intuition. And, from the get-go, that was my reservation is, I don't want to sell to friends. Like I feel icky cold messaging people. And you're told like, you're going to feel gross about this, but this is how you do it. And then the more you do it and the more you repeat it, the more natural it becomes. And, you're told if you get a negative message, oh, they're just a hater. You're told if someone says no, just, keep asking until they say yes. You're really it kind of just beat into you that you're supposed to really ignore your intuition. My brother specifically was very, very skeptical of the whole thing from the beginning and, always tried to talk me out of it. My mom was kind of like, whatever you want to do, but, not my thing. So I didn't get a lot of negative pushback from the get-go. It was more over time, just the not taking a no for an answer and continuing to post about it. And I noticed over time, people unfollowing me or ignoring my messages. And it just makes relationships uncomfortable when you're really trying to monetize them.
If you don't mind my asking, how did you do? Did you and the other women that you knew make money doing this? Because I know the FTC says that, your odds of making money aren't very high, unfortunately. But if you did, what did you find impacted your odds?
The statistics are grim. Like, 99% of people lose money, and not just don't make money, lose money. And so I was lucky in the sense that in my particular area I lived, I was really one of the first consultants for this company. And so a lot of people joined me, a lot of people purchased from me. And to me, I was like, wow, I'm rising in the ranks really quickly. I'm really successful. And so I grew really, really fast. So I was the exception to the rule. And I was like the success story that was shared. And meanwhile, really nobody else was achieving the same success, because as it gets saturated and more people buy into it, people can't have the same level of success. But I really was kind of trapped by these golden handcuffs that I was making more money. I really thought that I was offering like a gift to people because they could potentially make this much money, without looking at the reality that none of them were. And I think too, one thing people don't think about is, not only are you competing with other people in that same company, but there's so many other MLM companies that have similar products in the same area. So an area can be saturated with very few number of consultants. And even though, yeah, you can sell to people in different states or whatever, generally the majority of your network is going to be local. And if you don't have a network that has a lot of money to spend and also has friends with a lot of money to spend, you're not going to really go that far.
So what was the turning point for you? At what point did you decide, I don't want to do this anymore?
I think there were a lot of little things over the years that I was able to ignore. What really started to turn my intuition back online was sort of an unrelated thing. I got sober halfway through my reign in multi-level marketing. And when I did that, I realized that a lot of the things I was doing, I didn't feel comfortable doing, without that liquid courage. Like I typically at night would have a couple glasses of wine and start sending cold messages. And I started realizing it just didn't feel good. And so I stopped doing those things. And then it was kind of interesting that the company started using my success story. Oh, look, she's gotten sober. And I was sort of elevated as this example of what this company can do for you, as if it was the company that did it, right? And so it kind of kept me locked in a little bit because I was talking about something that I was really passionate about. I was still doing really well financially, but I didn't feel good about it. So that's really when the cracks started to form in the facade, that I started to see that not only are other people not succeeding like I am, it's not due to their lack of work. They're doing all the things that I was doing. They're doing all the things they're supposed to be doing. And I'm starting to realize that I've been drowning my intuition for years and years and years. And that's really when I really started looking more critically at what was really going on.
Your book has a lot of interesting takes, I think, on MLMs. You say that a lot of them nowadays subscribe to a kind of fake feminism, and that terms like girl boss or boss babe can be infantilizing. You also say that, while a lot of MLM employees might be women, oftentimes the people at the top are men. And one thing that particularly stuck out to me, you say you witnessed a lot of institutionalized racism in Rejuvenat. Tell me a little bit more about that front.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can look at, honestly, any convention, conference, look at social media, at any photo of, a leaders event in any MLM, and you will not see a lot of color there. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you look at the lineup of the structure of not only the consultants in the company, but you look at the upper echelons in management, the CEOs, the VPs, most of them are white men. And the whole structure really ignores any differences in economics, different areas having different economics. The product, for example, in makeup shades, usually are not diverse colors. There's a lot of light shades and not a lot of, dark shades. And so there's just a lot of little things. You'll see a lot of marketing materials with women of Asian descent, but you won't necessarily see a lot of those people actually working in the company. And so there was a lot of smoke and mirrors around what was offered and what wasn't. There wasn't literature in Spanish, for example. Everything was really set up for white women to do well. And just the simple meritocracy of it, that the harder you work, the better you can do. It doesn't work. We don't all have the same resources. We don't all have the same childcare, the same 24 hours. It's really set up in a way for affluent, suburban white women to do well.
So once you decided you were done with Rejuvenat, was it hard to leave?
The cost was just the sense that I walked away from still a pretty hefty paycheck. That was the cost. But at that point, you couldn't pay me enough to stay after everything I had seen. The pushback, I had talked to my upline and other people in the company about how I was, unhappy and the things I didn't like. And I was always encouraged to stay, just stick it out. You can't fail unless you quit. That's the only way you can fail is if you quit. And I felt like I was failing every day because so many of the people I brought into the company weren't doing well, were losing money, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And unsurprising, when I did send in my termination form, people were not happy. It was very much now I was on the other side. Now I was one of the haters that I'd always cautioned people about. So it changed very quickly.
As you mentioned earlier, the sales process could be pretty damaging to some of your relationships. If you're on the other end of this, if you have a friend or loved one who is in an MLM and, maybe you don't particularly want to support that company, but you do want to support them, is there a way you can turn them down when it comes to buying products and still support them?
The answer I want to give is just say no. No is a complete sentence. Tell them no. But when you're in an MLM, you are really trained to never take no for an answer and to find what their reservations are and really talk them out of those reservations as quickly as possible. So, sometimes ignoring is the best means, just not responding. If you say no and they give you pushback, just say, I respect you, or, we're friends, but I don't want to hear about this anymore, or whatever. And then as far as like supporting friends, if you do have a friend who's selling things like around the holidays, for example, and you really want to support them, the best way to support somebody is just direct support. What do they need support in? Do they need money? Give them a gift card for gas, or give them for groceries, or come over and make them a meal, or babysit their kids or something if you want to support, because ultimately, if you're buying a product for them, they get very little of the actual money in their pocket. It's going to support their uplines. It's going to support the structure. It's going to keep them more ensnared. And it's really not going to give them any type of support.
So if you could go back in time and I guess give yourself some advice, or, if you know someone who's considering getting into an MLM, what advice would you give? What should people be keeping in mind?
I would say just really look at, for one, do a profit loss statement. Look at the amount of money you are actually spending, all the products you have to buy, the babysitters you have to get, the events you have to put on, the clothes you have to buy for these events, all the money you put into it. And then look at the actual money you're making. Make sure you're looking at the taxes that are not taken out that you have to claim at the end of the year. And ask yourself how much you're working and figure out, like, what am I being paid per hour here? And I think that's a really good equalizer to say, oh my gosh, wow, I'm losing money, or I'm making, $1 an hour or something, to look at how hard they're working and what they're making from it. And then also just to take a look at their own behavior, their own language, and take a step back and have critical thinking. And just say, like, what if I'm not 100% right? What if the things my upline is telling me are not 100% right? Like, what if there's a little untruth to this? And I think just allowing for the possibility that they're not totally right will help them make better decisions going forward.
What do you hope readers most take away from this book?
The very worst statistics on people losing money, they're worse than what you can imagine. And they're called pyramid schemes for a reason. They're just product-based pyramid schemes. But the actuality, if it was really a pyramid, the bottom of the pyramid would be so wide that it would be miles and miles and miles long. And the top would just be a few pixels, because the number of people that it takes for the people at the top to do well, it's astronomical. And so just to know that whatever negative statistics you hear about MLMs, it's worse. It's worse than you can imagine.
Emily Lynn Paulson is an author, public speaker, and founder of the Sober Mom Squad, a digital community for moms in recovery. Her book on her experience in multi-level marketing, though, is called Hey Hun: Sales, Sisterhood, Supremacy, and the Other Lies Behind Multi-Level Marketing. It's out now through Row House Publishing. To learn more about Emily and her work, you can check out her website. That's emilylynnpaulson.com. Emily, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
The media we consume plays a big role in setting beauty standards. Usually they're unrealistic. We've done multiple episodes on this show about how social media can have a negative impact on the mental health of teens and young adults, and how it can even promote eating disorders. But we're also constantly bombarded with images of the ideal woman or the ideal man in film, magazines, advertisements, department stores. It's relentless. Now, the rise of artificial intelligence has some in the fashion industry worried that women will be chasing standards set by photos that aren't even real.
My name is Sarah Ziff, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Model Alliance.
It could also put models out of a job. Here in New York, the legislative session is underway, and the Model Alliance is renewing efforts to pass a slate of regulations on the fashion industry called the Fashion Workers Act. Sarah Ziff, founder and executive director of the Alliance, says models currently have little protection under New York state labor laws. She says decades-old loopholes give modeling agencies the ability to exercise basically power of attorney over their models, deciding which jobs they take, what they're paid, and how their image is ultimately used. Take, for example, Australian model Robin Lawley. Lawley first started modeling in 2006 and is perhaps best known for her work in plus-sized campaigns for brands and magazines like H&M, Lane Bryant, Marie Claire, and Sports Illustrated. Even before AI, though, she says she quickly learned that how she looked on set and what she expected from a photo shoot often didn't line up with what made it into the magazine.
I've been made to look skinnier, bigger, younger, older, shorter, taller. I've had items digitally removed from my body and then digitally placed onto my body. I've been, from this London studio to the Bahamas, or most frequently used my skin suddenly looks like a plastic doll, like all lines and wrinkles removed without my prior knowledge.
The Fashion Workers Act would require management agencies to establish a fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of their talent, to provide models with copies of their contracts and agreements, to let them know if they're still collecting royalties years later, and more. Ziff says the latest version of the bill also provides a clear definition of what is considered a digital replica of a model's image, and requires brands and management companies to obtain written consent before using a model's image or altering it with AI, laying out things like the purpose, pay, scope, and duration of each use. Asked if there could be any situation in which a model would want to sign off on AI, Lolly says there might be. It could give models a way to make money off their image without having to physically go to a photo shoot, for example. But right now, she says the issue is that they're not even being asked.
They would probably take a choice if they had an option, but we've never had an option. Like, so often my image gets used and abused and changed, and there's no one to speak to about it.
Taiwanese-American model Shireen Wu says that was pretty much the case for her. Wu says she's now taking a break from social media after a photo of her on Instagram sparked widespread debate last year. After walking the runway for a well-known designer and hoping to get some positive exposure from it, Wu says she was devastated to find out that the picture posted from that event featured her body, but not her face.
The head is eerily replaced with that of a white woman. I was unrecognizable. My ethnicity as a Taiwanese American model has been completely erased.
According to a report by The Guardian, the designer in question denied altering the photo, saying in a since-deleted Instagram post that he received the image as fan art. Who edited the photo and how is unknown, but Wu suspects that it was done with AI.
The face doesn't look like anyone in particular, so it wasn't like a celebrity's face slapped onto my body. And it was clearly had this like eerie quality where it's in that like uncanny valley that is really reminiscent of AI generated images.
Democratic State Senator Brad Hoylman-Siegel, who sponsored the bill, says this is an important issue for New York to address because New York City is the center of the fashion industry in the U.S. He says the industry employs roughly 180,000 people in New York City alone, representing roughly $11 billion in wages. New York Fashion Week, he says, generates close to $9 million a year. The Fashion Workers Act was first introduced in 2022, and it passed the Senate last year, but it failed to move in the Assembly. Ziff and Hoylman-Siegel blame that on an unusually short session. He feels they'll have much better luck this time around.
I can assure you, let's get the Fashion Workers Act passed.
And greater regulation will likely be needed. We see these provisions as a necessary first step toward establishing baseline protections around transparency and consent for the use of generative AI.
The New York legislative session runs until June 6th. Last week, we recognized what would have been the 51st anniversary of Roe v. Wade had it not been overturned by the Supreme Court in 2022. In New York, Governor Kathy Hochul and Democrats in power in the state legislature recognized the day by vowing to keep the procedure legal and safe. Before we wrap up today's episode, Karen DeWitt with the New York Public News Network brings us more.
Hochul, speaking before Planned Parenthood groups gathered at the Capitol, says in New York, which legalized the right to abortion in 1970, 3 years before Roe, the anniversary of the landmark decision was a reason to celebrate. Now, she says, instead of mourning the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe in 2022, she's taking steps to strengthen the right to choose the procedure in New York, including offering a ballot amendment in the fall elections.
That is why the right to an abortion will be enshrined forever after this November's election, because it's on the ballot.
The Equal Rights Amendment to the state's constitution would protect the rights of pregnant people as well as LGBTQ+ New Yorkers and people with disabilities. The amendment would also prevent the state from ever implementing a ban on abortion or stopping state Medicaid funding for the procedure. Democrats in New York hope the ballot amendment can raise voter turnout and could be a deciding factor in some competitive seats for Congress that Republicans gained in 2022. Hochul says she's urging other blue states to take similar steps and codify abortion rights into their states' constitutions.
Because if they have the courage, individually, 50 states, to enshrine these rights, we can thwart what the Supreme Court is trying to do to our nation. We can set them backwards by showing that the power rests with the people and the power occurs at the ballot box.
Hochul's actions are part of a larger strategy among Democrats across the nation. Both houses of the New York State Legislature passed a number of bills to strengthen abortion rights and to improve maternal health care and other reproductive care. The Senate sponsor of a bill to protect women's reproductive health privacy online, Liz Krueger, says New York has been coordinating with other states led by Democrats to pass the same measures.
We're trying to do parallel laws throughout the country because when we get our country back and turn things around at the federal level, we would like to have exactly those same laws become the laws of this country. And frankly, we don't want to have 50 different sets of laws when these are national issues. So we're hoping we all, in the states that haven't lost our minds, actually pass these exact same laws.
On the Senate floor, some Republicans who are in the minority in the legislature quietly voted against the measures that support abortion rights. But in what was perhaps a nod to the issue's potency among New York voters, who are predominantly Democratic or independent, no GOP senator spoke about the bills on the floor. In Albany, I'm Karen DeWitt for the New York Public News Network.
Thanks for listening to this week's 51%. 51% is a national production of WAMC Northeast Public Radio in Albany, New York. It's produced and hosted by me, Jesse King. Our associate producer is Jody Cowan, and our theme is Lolita by the Albany-based artist Girl Blue. Just a reminder that you can listen to 51% anytime at WAMCpodcasts.org or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can stay in the loop on all of WAMC shows by signing up for our weekly newsletter Airwaves at WAMC.org. We hope you'll join us next week. Until then, I'm Jesse King for 51%.
I was every single girl, I was nobody else, I was so sure of myself. I was 15 and a half, he was a hollow laugh. And I lost my cool somewhere along the way. At night and down the hallway, I had to learn how to look away. I lost my cool, no electricity, hot rain on the concrete, sweet melting little girl dreams. They said, oh, I want a big life, not a house that could have been like. Where are you taking me? Where are you taking me? Said